Well, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. One of the things we've been talking about over the last few weeks as we've navigated the racial tension, the racial injustices that have once again come front and center in our nation. We don't have all the answers, but one of the first steps we can all take is to listen. It's just to sit down and have some conversations and hear the perspectives of other people. And so we're going to do that today. And I thought, what better way to do it than for you to get to watch and listen to someone who is incredibly well respected in our community. So this guy probably needs no introduction, but let me introduce you to Shane Nichols here. Shane is a son, a husband, coach, leader, about to be a girl dad.
Yes,
so congratulations on that, Shane.
Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
October. That's exciting. So Shane, thanks so much for sitting down and having this conversation. People in our community and really in our region, they know you well. They respect you. You're an incredible leader. You invest in young men. I mean, that's really what you do with your life.
Right.
And a lot of those are African-American young men. So as we've seen everything take place, I'm sure that it's created a lot of emotion and reaction in you, but also in the young men that you lead and that you invest in. So I want to get into that in just a minute. But first, for people who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to Murray?
I grew up in Radford, Virginia, small town, Southwest Virginia, right near Blacksburg. If anybody is familiar with Virginia Tech,
Sure.
It's about 15 minutes away.
They are because of Frank Beamer.
Exactly.
That's right.
Justin Fuente.
Justin Fuente now.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. So, that's where I grew up.
Okay.
Love it there. Great people, great community. I really, it's somewhat like Murray, probably a little bigger.
Okay.
Closer to the size of Paducah, but
okay.
Really great town to grow up in.
Yeah. So you ended up coming here to Murray in what year?
2015.
2015.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you came in when Matt McMahon became coach here.
Yes, sir.
And so you've been in Murray now for 5 years.
Yes.
Tell me, what was your first reaction and what emotions did you feel and have you felt as some of these racial injustices came to the surface again? So we were all watching. We heard about the killing of Miss Taylor in Louisville. Mm-hmm. We heard about the murder of Mr. Arbery in Georgia, and then the murder of George Floyd. That all happened in a really short span of time. So Shane, help me understand from your point of view, as all this began to become public, what were some of the emotions? What was your first reaction to it all?
My first reaction was, there's another one. For me growing up, there's certain things that you're taught. We're taught at a young age is we're afraid of the police. So it's not.
So when you say at a young age, let me dig into this a little. So what were you being? How young were you, and what were some of the things you were told or you were warned about as you were growing up?
Well, I've never really experienced, police brutality or anything at a young age, but you see it all the time, and I think, the media has a big part in it, of what they show, and so all you see is, black guys, black kids, getting locked up. Abused, maybe harassed for stuff they didn't really do. And so, you're looking at it as, okay, I don't want to be one of those people.
So that, for you, that started at a young age of you just having, was there a sense where you just felt like you had to be more aware and more careful of what you did?
Yes, for sure. And I think, I had great parents. They really supported my brother and I, and we had a great support system, and I think that's where it starts. A lot of kids don't.
Sure.
A lot of kids don't, and so um, it's hard. I mean, it's a vicious cycle because um, you see all the time. A lot of black communities might be over policed. You know, guys are. You see all the time. People are accused of stuff they didn't do, and now they're stuck in the system for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, Nonviolent crimes, they're stuck in the system for a long time, and so now you have you have black kids that grow up without fathers,
Yeah.
and you know now where's your support system? So it just becomes a vicious cycle.
Cyclical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me fast forward a little bit back to what we've seen the last few weeks. But I think your background, and this is part of why I interrupted you a minute ago to ask you this. And you may want to speak more to this. As a white man growing up in a white family, my mom and dad never sat me down and had any conversations with me about if you get pulled over, if this happened. I mean, I got the conversation of if you get a speeding ticket, I'm taking your keys away. I had that, but there was never the concern that you're describing, the extra awareness. There was never any of that was even communicated to me. So I think sometimes those of us who are white, we don't understand. We don't even begin to understand that's a factor that you and other African Americans take into consideration because it doesn't cross our mind. Is that something you've seen? And how do you feel like that? How do you feel like that impacts the experience of African Americans as they're growing up? And as we see instances like Miss Taylor, Mr. Floyd, and Mr. Arbery.
Well, I'll just tell you, I had a situation where I was at home. I was in college at the time, but I was at home, and I think it was two other friends in the car with me, and we were driving back home. We were hanging out at a friend's house, driving back home. It was night, and there was a cop posted up, on the road as we drove by, and once I passed, the lights go into the car. They see who's in there. So they pull me over and say, we pulled you over because you had your high beams on too long. And I knew that wasn't true because I have to push the button.
I never touched the button.
I never touched the button. So, that right there was like, why did you really pull me over?
I've never heard of anybody getting pulled over for high beams anyway. Yeah.
Right. And so we got out the car, we got searched, I don't do drugs, so, we weren't drinking, it was just, and that right there was kind of like, for us and for me is, were you going to expect that, from time to time? It's just what it is, and you got to move on from it.
Wow. So that was your perspective on it. This is just a normal part of my life. Mm-hmm. This is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm. What did you feel in that moment?
I mean, I was scared. At the same time, I was humiliated because, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't speeding, I didn't have my high beams on.
Yeah.
I didn't have drugs or, alcohol. So,
what you just said in all the conversations I've had with African Americans, and I don't hear this mentioned a lot, Shane, but the humiliation piece, there's a sense in which when these things happen and I didn't do anything, mm-hmm. It seems like there's a sense in which it is an attack on your dignity and worth as an individual. Is that accurate?
That's true. It's true.
Do you think that, even though it's not talked about a lot, is that part of the underlying emotion that fuels some of the, I don't know if anger is the right word, but discontent?
Yeah, I think, for instance, it's like what I just explained. Everybody gets caught up in the numbers, murders for this race or that race.
Yeah.
Well, what's the data for that? You know, what's the data for that kind of stuff that I went through?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it's not just about, obviously the murders are awful, but it's not just about, you know, the murders or police brutality or anything like that. It's just about, you know, if you say you're a good person, you say you're a Christian, you know, racism has nothing to do with that.
Right, absolutely.
It shouldn't go hand in hand.
Yep.
So, you know.
So as you've grown up, any other examples of racism? What are some ways this shows up? Sometimes it's not subtle at all, right? But other times it can be really subtle. What are some of those experiences maybe you or friends have had that have an impact on you and on the dignity, worth, and value that you feel like you should have?
Well, I know, and I talked to my brother about this the other day. We lived on a street that was actually all black in my neighborhood.
Okay.
And it was right by the city park, so we were always at the park playing.
Sure.
You know, about 5 or 6 of us. I swear, every summer there was always somebody that rode by and yelled the N-word to us.
Really?
You know, not doing anything.
Y'all were just in the park playing.
Just playing. And so, you know, I don't necessarily know if it bothered us, but I mean, we kind of got used to it. I don't know if we got used to it, but it was just
the fact that you felt like you had to accept it is just part of life, right?
Right.
That's unreal.
Right. Or, you know, I think for us, like some of us yelled, you know, get out the truck and say it, you know, but nobody would ever do that.
They're not doing that. Yeah.
It was, you know, it was
frustrating.
I don't know if it bothered me as much because I don't let a lot of stuff bother me.
Yeah.
But, you know, you could see it. It kind of made a lot of us mad.
Made an impact.
Yeah.
So let me fast forward back now to the last few weeks as all of this has happened. Describe for me, Shane, from your perspective, again, what are some of the emotions you're feeling and what are some of the thoughts you've had over the last few weeks?
Well, obviously, I feel like something needs to change. The hard part is it's a lot that needs to change. You know, as far as, you know, systematic stuff. You know, and I put a post out that I'm not necessarily, you know, I have a privilege because I've been an athlete, you know, and now I'm a coach, you know, so quote unquote status that I may have, I don't necessarily see a lot of the treatment that maybe other black people see. Because I'm recognized.
You're more well known, right?
Right. And I don't think that's right either, but at the same time, I understand why it may be that way. And in my post, I talked about, you know, 10 years ago when, you know, my friend was murdered. And, you know, I don't really speak on it a whole lot, but childhood best friend growing up, you know, 10 years ago was my first year coaching at Wofford. I get a call. And he's a manager at Papa John's.
Okay. African-American
manager at Papa John's. One of his employees is a 45-year-old white man. And he's 26, you know, 26. So disgruntled, not happy.
The employee, the white man?
Yeah. Not happy he's working for, you know, a African-American guy. Stages a robbery, makes him get down on his knees, shoots him execution style.
Oh my gosh.
And so, you know, I get the call and, you know, I automatically lost it. You know, I said, Coach, I gotta go back home.
Yeah.
You know, and the hard part was, you know, seeing his mother, having to carry the body out, you know, it was tough, you know, and just unnecessary stuff.
That's what all of this feels like to me. That's a great word, Shane. I'll keep looking at it going, this is so unnecessary. What do you wish white Americans, and maybe I shouldn't lump them all together. You can just tell me, but what do you wish white Americans knew and understood about racism and the experiences that African Americans have in our country?
I just wish, I mean, you got to understand there's good and bad people in everywhere.
Sure.
You know, in every race.
Yep.
You know, and I think what some fail to realize is if they actually sat down and talked and listened, they realize that you know, you have a lot in common with people from other races.
Absolutely.
You might actually like them.
Yeah,
you might actually be good friends with them.
That's right.
And you know, that's the thing that kind of bothers me, because you know, I don't care about that. I know black people that are bad. I know great ones. I know white people that are bad. I know great ones.
Yep.
You know, so I just wish people would care more and put themselves in other people's shoes and see how they felt about it then. And I think that, I mean, if you can honestly sit back and evaluate yourself and do that, I think you could be convicted to change a little bit.
Oh, that is incredible advice. How would you suggest? And I'm going to talk, because I am one. I'm going to talk about white Americans. How would you suggest we go about learning to listen to and put ourselves in the shoes of and develop friendships with African Americans?
I think you have to talk and listen. You know, there's got to be a dialogue like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to do research, because a lot of the stuff that we're taught, you know, isn't the whole truth.
Yeah.
I remember growing up. And everybody in Virginia will tell you the same thing. You know, they took us to plantations and said they were servants. And you know, us not knowing anything, we're happy just to get out of school.
Absolutely.
It's a field trip. But once I think back, I'm like, man, it's kind of awkward.
So they never taught you about the slavery that existed on those plantations in full truth.
In full truth, yeah. In full truth.
Yeah, that is kind of awkward, I would say.
It's kind of awkward. Now that I think about it, I'm like, man, I was happy as can be to be on a plantation where
with no idea of the history,
with no idea
right?
of the history. And so, you know, just stuff like that, man. And you know, like I recommend everybody go watch 13th on Netflix.
I saw you mention that on Twitter. It's on my list.
It is an eye opener. You know, I knew a lot of the stuff, but I didn't know, like, you talk about segregation and how that came about. And then you talk about, you know, once that was over, how there were certain communities only black people could live in. And then how Nixon, and it's documented, I'm not making this up,
right,
pumped drugs in that community to disrupt them.
Oh, wow.
And then really cracked down on it and sent everybody to jail. So, I mean, that's systematic racism, and that starts the cycle over and over and over and over. So just do your research before you spew out things that you might not know about.
Well, and to that point, I'm going to ask you this, and then I'll give my answer. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot by yourself. Whose responsibility is it in America? I hear a lot of white Americans saying, I don't know, help me understand. But how does that feel to an African American when I'm looking at you saying, oh, you need to teach me everything I need to know? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm not. I didn't write the history books.
Right.
You know, no, I'm okay with it. If they want to, if anybody wants to talk to me about it,
You're
like I
happy
said,
to have conversations.
I'm happy to have conversation. I would love to have a conversation. You know, I don't know everything,
Sure.
but I've been doing a lot more reading on, you know, the history and the real history of why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're at an unbelievable place in our world where everything you can look it up. So
that's it.
You
right?
can look it up. I mean, and you know, obviously you got to cipher through fake sites and all that stuff, but you can look a lot of this
but
up.
it's get a book and read it. It's watch a documentary. One of the things that was really helpful for me, Shane, about 4 years ago, I started reading some biographies on Martin Luther King Jr., some of what he had done. I started sitting down with African Americans in our church and just having conversations with them. And what that did was, to what you said earlier, I'm never going to understand exactly what's like to be in your shoes because I'm not you. But I can start seeing your perspective, and I can start learning about some of the experiences that, again, I would just be clueless to if I didn't ask. That's one of the things that I have found interesting. Just like you said, you don't talk about your childhood friend's death very often. You don't go around telling the story of getting pulled over. Unless we ask and listen, we just don't know what's going on in your world.
Right.
And I feel like there's a lot of value. I would love to see more of us who are white sit down and have these conversations and just ask, what's it been like? What is it like? I think that's where we learn a lot that we don't know.
Right. I think people should understand, you know, and I saw a quote that said, your world isn't the world.
Yes.
You know, so, you know, try to see it from other people's points of view, and, you know, don't be so closed-minded, you know, to what you think is right.
No, that's good. What advice would you give to all of us? Here we are, we're in the middle of this. We're all angered by the murders we're seeing, by the injustice we're seeing. I think most people want to see a change at this point, but you said it so well earlier. There's so much that has to change. We got a long way to go, right? So just from your perspective, what advice would you give us? What should we do next?
Well, first of all, I want to say that, you know, and there might be some, but most black people aren't saying it's black versus white.
That's a great point to make.
I think it's black and everybody versus racism.
There you go.
I think it's right versus wrong.
Yep.
You know, no matter what color it is. I think that, you know, that's what people. So I don't want white people to get offended.
Right.
You know, when they hear Black Lives Matter, it's not to offend another race. It's to say, hey, Black Lives Matter too.
You're the ones in danger right now.
So
yeah.
And again, you know, people are going to bring up numbers. Well, numbers don't justify what you get every day.
Yeah, numbers don't tell the whole story.
Right. And so, you know, again, you know, if people don't feel that way and don't feel like they're, you know, supporting racism, you know, just stand up for what's right. Just stand up for what's right. And you know right from wrong.
You know what's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
What is it? Last question I'll have for you. What does it mean to you, and as best you can tell to most African Americans, what does it mean when white Americans stand with and stand beside you and say that's right and that's wrong?
It means the world.
Why is that?
Because I don't think before it's happened. And, you know, there were probably some in the 60s, but not many.
Right.
Not many. And things did change. I won't say that they did it and nothing changed. Things changed.
Things have changed.
But I mean,
we hadn't crossed the finish line yet.
not even close.
Right.
Not even close. Yeah, I think it means the world. I mean, because, you know, obviously I don't know the percentages, but there's a lot more white people in this world in this country than there are black. So there's strength in numbers.
That's it.
There's strength in numbers.
There's always been some white Americans who have stood with the African Americans for justice. But I don't know if that we've ever seen an era where there's been the majority. If we could have that, then we're united around, and I love the way you said it. It's not black versus white.
Right.
It's right versus wrong. Any final thoughts? Any final word?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. Definitely hope this can reach somebody who might be on the fence.
Yeah.
And help them understand that, it's just, we're fighting for equality of humanity.
Absolutely. That's so well said. Shane, I just want to tell you, your leadership in this community is extraordinary. And the investment you make in young men, it's incredible. And it's obvious by the number of young men who have been under your influence and leadership and have gone on to already do some extraordinary things. So thank you.
Thank you
so much for leading.
Thank you.
And thanks for being willing to speak about this. These kinds of conversations, man, this is what we need. We need more of this. And I just want to encourage you all as we're wrapping this up. If you haven't had a conversation like this or haven't in a while, just reach out. These conversations go a long way. I think they help us grow.
No question.
Shane, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.